Hello, and thank you very much for joining. Sorry for being late. I'm very apologetic. Let us just give me one moment just to further prepare, or not prepare, further get settled in here, and we will be on our way. So just hold on for one moment, please. And then, by the way, if you can just let me know if the sound is okay and everything else. Thank you so much, my friends. Great. Sorry about this. Just falling a little bit behind, but I hope you can. We'll be talking about this film, by the way, Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, from 1989. Very much looking forward to this, by the way. Great. Okay. Great. Let's give it another minute or so, and then we will begin shortly. Looking forward to it, by the way. Let's see. Kubrick Lovers here. Thank you so much. Scott, hello. with a reference to Poltergeist. Christian is here. Hello. Thank you so much. Thank you. Floyd in Pink is here. Yes, of course. We're going to talk about camping, marshmallows. We'll be talking about, yes, right, beans and secret ingredient. And of course, yes, row your boat, of course, yes. What a very important component of this film. And I mean that with all sincerity. Let's see. Yes, Scott. Yes, you mentioned it. Yes, the beans with the secret ingredient. Yes, of course. And let's see. Christian says, talks about the character of Cybok is right up there with Khan, in my opinion. Oh, yes. Zyrother's here. Hello. Yes, don't stand around. God's a busy man. Samuel is here. It's nice to see you. And Analysis of Sci-Fi is here. Hello. Can't watch this full, but catch video. No problem, my friend. No problem. Thanks. I'll see you later, and have a great rest of the day. Matt is here. Good morning. It looked like God was living in the state of Utah. And Fuzz Aldrin. Hey, Roger's here. Hello. Christian continues. Should be noted that I double featured this movie today with part 4. Loved part 4 still. Well done. Well done indeed. Okay. All right, so I think we can get started. Oh, and Zyrother says, I love that poster artwork. Me too. Yes. I think we can get started. So let us begin in earnest, shall we? So, greetings from Tokyo, my dear friends. This is Daisuke, and I very much hope that this video or live stream finds you well and in very good spirits wherever you are in the world. I should say, heads up. I admit I'm probably not finding myself in the greatest of spirits. Actually, I've had a bit of a somewhat let's say somewhat stressful past few days or so. Nothing of any serious consequence, but I might not necessarily be feeling the most maybe I might not necessarily be feeling 100% today, and so I really ask for your understanding, and I ask for just your patience. So I will do my best, especially with a film like Star Trek V, because it's and of course Star Trek films, and of course discussions with you, because this sort of thing it means very much a lot to me, and it is my hope that. In recalling this film, with you together in this casual live stream chat conversation, I might feel invigorated and I might feel energized. And so I will be relying on you very much so, as I always have done, to continue on with the spirit of, shall we say, energy and enthusiasm for this thing that we love, which is cinema. So, just a heads up, if I'm not necessarily feeling all that up to it today, my sincerest apologies if because of that maybe I might feel or this live stream might be somewhat lacking in your opinion, but I of course do my best. And so let's see. Uh, what was I going to say? So yes, so the conversation today is, as always, a not meant to be in any form a type of review, a comprehensive review. I am not also in any way I'm not a professional reviewer. I'm not a professional critic. I'm not an academic. I'm not a scholar in Star Trek or cinema. I just happen to uh, have a fondness for these films. And I've seen these films and Star Trek V for a number of times over a number of years, including this in the theater when it was released in, what was it, 1989. It seems like yesterday, actually, to me. So, in that way, I will be speaking about this film. So, this is just meant to be a fun, casual conversation about this. You can bring to the table anything you like. The live chat is open for you and for anyone who wants to reach out to me, reach out to anyone about this film. I'm all ears, as always. And so, in that spirit, I am, of course, relying on you to always listen to people and listen to others and to maintain a sense of mutual respect, even where there might be disagreement or debate. I know that at the end of the day, it is a film discussion, and we all are or can be potentially friends talking about film. So I know that I can rely upon you for that type of atmosphere because you've always done so for me in the past, and I always am very grateful to you. And so let me thank you in advance for that type of atmosphere. My dear friends, thank you very much. And also, we will, of course, be talking about spoilers of this film. So, if you have not seen the film Star Trek V, The Final Frontier, please, I encourage you to stop this live stream or video. And when you have already seen the film, you can come back at any time, and if you're still interested, and watch this live stream, which will, after this is over, be uploaded to this channel after the fact. So again, I don't want to spoil anything because there are a number of really engaging and potentially rewarding things that await you when you watch this if you haven't seen it already. So, and I recall too the first time I saw it in the theater, and so there were a number of things that were like, oh, so this is something that I want to preserve, and I think the best way to do so, if you haven't seen it yet, is of course to watch the film, and then you can come back at any time, my friends. And let's see. I think is that. Oh yes, of course. If you want to reach out to me in the live chat, please feel free to do so. I will do my best to mention as many people as possible, as well as your comment. If for one reason or another I skip over your name, I apologize. If I skip over your comment too, I apologize. I will try to address as many as possible, but as you who have attended past live streams have been witness to, I am very, very bad when it comes to reading the comments. But I always say I try to fix that, I'll try to remedy it, but somehow or another I seem to fall very, very short. But even though I might fall short, that doesn't mean I won't try. So I will certainly try, and hopefully, if hopefully I won't cause any offense. If I do, then please note that nothing ill will is thought of on my part. On the contrary. So let's see. I think that is about it in terms of the preliminaries. So I think let us go to the live stream, and we will proceed with our discussion in earnest of Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Let's see. Samuel says, we should end this live stream with a rendition of Row, Row, Row Your Boat. Yes, that's a really interesting idea. Um, I applaud and indeed endorse that. So I wish, let's say, how should I say? Um, uh, Kapla, right? Okay. Let's see here. Hold on. Sorry about this. I am just falling apart here. Yes. Okay. There we go. Neo Blissy X versus Hello. It's nice to see you as always, my friend. You say, hope we can lift your spirits through this discussion. Just by being able to see you and everyone else here, my spirits have already been lifted quite significantly. So thank you so much. Christian says, hope all becomes better soon, my friend. I hope we help your Sunday be that much better. Thank you so much. Mixed Memorabilia says, hello, I finally get to grab a live chat. It's nice to see you. Thank you. Fuzz says, get well soon, Daisuke. Thank you so much. Roger says the same thing. Thank you, Roger. Scott, thank you. Thank you so much. Neo says, the only reason Shatner got the director's gig was that he, Leonard Nimoy, their lawyers, and Paramount had something called a favored nations clause where where what one got, the other would get. So one is, you're of course referring to the fact that as Leonard Nimoy had the director's responsibilities for the previous two installments, now we have the latest installment, and now William Shatner, who is the director of this work. Let's see. Scott says, Jerome Weaselberry is in the house, our dear friend. Yes. Let's see. Wonderful, wonderful Jerome Weaselberry. Kubrick Lover says, sorry, I was eating and drinking in the kitchen. Was it beans by any chance? Making a reference to the Star Trek V camping sequence, of course, or marshmelons. Yes. So, all right, let's just. I'll get to the chat. I'll return to the chat, but I will. Um, oh, I see. Also, William says I'm walking through Disney World, so I chat. I can't chat much. I truly love um, this film. The heart of Trek is here through all its flaws. William, thank you so much. Please enjoy Disney World. Yes, please enjoy it. Thank you so much for stopping by, though. Um, Despite your mid Disney World trek, as it were. So, Disney trek. So anyway, William, thank you. And the warmest regards to you, my friend. It's nice. I know you've joined in on other occasions as well, so thank you. Eric is also here. Thank you. Oh, Eric, I saw your lovely comment about there was a video I did. What was it? It was something like it was the Criterion. Was it my homemade Criterion closet or something? So I'm and I think about that video. I'm kind of embarrassed actually by it, but the comment that you left behind, Eric, was I read it. I haven't responded to it yet, but I read it, and I must say it really warmed my heart in many ways, and I needed it. As I was mentioning before, I'm going through a bit of a rough patch at the moment, so your words really lifted me. So thank you so much for that. Great. Chiggers is here. Hello. It's nice to see you too. Atari2602 is here. Shatner was no Leonard Nimoy when it came to directing. Yes, we will talk about some of the maybe what might be called the director's choices or style or aspects of the style when you get into this in earnest. Which let us do that right now. So Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. This is a really, I would say, quite a fascinating work for a number of reasons. Let me start off by saying I saw this one in the theater too. 1989. I was a kid of the 80s, and there was a sort of still this thrill and excitement in the air, as we know at the end of Star Trek 4. Admiral Kirk has been demoted to captain, but we understand too that in his heart of hearts, this is something that he had always hoped and dreamed and longed for, and finally he got his wish, as it were. And so uh, the Enterprise, now Enterprise A, is now leaving Space Dock, and of course we see the crew now assembled as well. We have what we understand to be essentially quite senior ranking members of Starfleet, but they are assembled in this crew, helmed by Captain Kirk on the Enterprise, the new Enterprise, and they go off in warp speed off into space into these new adventures of sort. We're not quite sure what the mission is. Is it a 5-year mission or something? So nothing is revealed in the film itself, but we understand that this is going to be the embarking of some kind of new chapter in their lives with the Enterprise. So it's a really it was a return home in many respects, which I was trying to refer to at the end of the that last live stream. Now we get what we see is, at least in terms of a visual medium, we see that adventure, or one of the adventures that was part of this, say, new chapter in their lives and in their careers. And so this new adventure, we of course, so there's a lot that feels very exciting, I think, from the get-go, or potentially exciting. And so, in that spirit, just off of the sort of buzz, if you will, and excitement and thrill of especially Star Trek 3 and 4 for me, I went into the theater with my I forget exactly, it would have been my mom and maybe some friends. We went to, or she took us to see Star Trek 5: The Final Frontier in the theater. And the film began with this sort of pre-title sequence. We had seen type of pre-title sequence, not in the all of the other films, but we had seen it, for example, in what's Star Trek 3: The Search for Spock, in a very interesting, intriguing way. Here we got a similar type of what one might call sepia-toned look to the pre-title sequence, due in large part to the decor and the environment and setting, which seems to be this desert world of some sort, which is we also understand is Nimbus 3, and Nimbus 3 will of course be very strategic when it comes to the plot and also the specific plan of the person that we will meet in this pre-title sequence, who is, we will learn later, is Cybok. Right? But before we meet, he emerges in this very Lawrence of Arabia entrance, and slow motion, riding on horseback in a type swirl and haze of a heat wave type of desert, and he emerges from what might seem to be a type of like myth or legend, almost like a Western film almost too. And so we have all these possible elements going on, also a type of desert, almost wasteland type of feel too, which almost gives it a post-apocalyptic Mad Max type of vibe to it as well, which is further enhanced as well when we get to the Paradise City scenes and Nimbus 3, etc. Not to mention also a bit of a Tatooine look and feel to it too, which is also further enhanced by when we get to Paradise City and the bar and the dancing cat with the three, and then and all this, and the pool table, and so uh, uh, what was I saying? So already we get a lot of very intriguing, interesting elements, and then the element of this maybe wanderer, this loner, being encountered by this mysterious figure, and nothing is fully explained, but we are catching up with things as we are seeing it unfold before our very eyes. So we're processing things, and therefore we understand that this is a desert planet of some sort. Nothing is there. They're digging. This person is digging holes for who knows what. And it seems also to have these weapons, which seem to be feeble things with rocks or something, as bullets or pellets of some sort. So it might seem to be very limited in terms of technology and possibility and availability of funds and resources. And in this wilderness, as it were, comes this mysterious robed figure, who has a hood, which is going to be taken off at the very end of this in a very significant way, of course. And this idea of pain, of sharing one's pain, and this healing process through maybe some kind of joint or shared experience. It might seem almost like a religious or religious type of experience as well. And that, of course, I think is further enhanced by the fact that this mysterious figure does don robes that do give off a somewhat religious type of vibe to it in terms of a formality or ceremony of some sort. It reminds me a little bit of a Kulinar type of thing, which is, of course, very much important in the culture of Vulcans that we were privy to all the way back in the first film, Star Trek the Motion Picture. But in any event, through this incredibly, I would say, mysterious pre-title sequence, we then get the reveal that this seemingly mysterious and powerful figure on horseback reveals himself to be a Vulcan. And not only is he a Vulcan, he laughs. Now, this is, I think, and then this starts the film. And he also seems to say that, he is on a quest of sorts. And in order to be able to further progress on his quest, he's going to need a starship. And so this then sets off a whole bunch of questions, which are timely set off too, because are they answered at this moment? No, they go straight into the title sequence and the return, as it were, of, I mentioned Star Trek the Motion Picture just a while ago, and now we have the return of Jerry Goldsmith's music and score, the theme which we heard in the first film, which we will hear again and again in the Next Generation, of course, but now we have its return, I would say triumphant return, Jerry Goldsmith in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Yes, it is in full swing. Now, before I get into the specifics of this film and how I feel about it now, when I saw this film as a kid in 1989 and I walked out of the theater, I felt the uh, I felt achingly disappointed. I felt to the point of being numb in terms of my disappointment. I felt like I was underwhelmed by it when the film ended and I left the theater. And so that feeling of maybe aching disappointment and numbness did linger as I revisited this film. And I did revisit the film a number of times, many times, in fact, on video and then on later like DVD or rental, and then this DVD, and then many other, and then Blu-rays after that. And so I think I have this actually. I have the DVD now, and I also have uh, yeah, I have a number of the films on DV on Blu-ray actually, but so I've seen it many times. The commentary tracks, because there are, I understand, at least two I've listened to, and the various special features, and including the deleted scenes. And I've also not read up, but I've listened to what the possibilities could have been for the original plans of this film, and William Shatner, and what he thought of, what he was intentionally, who he wanted to have initially write something. It didn't work out. Maybe there's other plans that he had initially had that didn't quite work out. They had to turn into something else. And so later on, of course, I began to appreciate those background details more and more. And so that was one thing that was on my radar as I progressed throughout the years. And then, of course, another thing happened too, which was it. Uh, I I think now, going back and thinking back on this film, of course, this crew is no longer with us in this particular form, right? We understand that this is something that maybe is there's a sense of nostalgia too, looking back on it, because this is something that no longer is, because now we have new versions of Star Trek. Now we've had since then various stories that didn't involve this crew together like this. We will of course have one more film with them together after this film, but my point is that now in 2022, and also throughout the years leading up to 2022, there wasn't this type of story with this crew. So I understand now, looking back, this crew's story number is quite limited. So, and in that limited number is, of course, Star Trek V: The Final Frontier. So, And then also, I began more and more since this time, since 1989, to become more acquainted with the original show, the TV series. And so at the time, as I might have mentioned in past live streams, I was not fully immersed in all of the TV episodes of Star Trek. I had, of course, seen a number of them when they were running or rerunning on whatever TV broadcast was making them available in my particular region at the time. But it wasn't like we have now with the entire set. You can watch the entire series or the seasons, and then you can become fully immersed in the say all the storylines that occurred prior, and then that might enhance your watching of these films. In particular, for example, Star Trek Five. There's a lovely reference to. Um, there's a lovely reference to what is it? All I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer by Melville, John Masefield. I sure know. I am well versed in the classics, right? And how come you don't know row, row, row your boat, right? So come on, Spock, come on. But anyway, yes. So that is a for those of you who know as well the original series. That is a lovely callback, as it were, to a moment that occurred in the original series, as well as being a wonderful reminder of Kirk's fondness for the classics and also that wonderful banter between Bones and Spock. That means that in watching more of the original series, in an interesting way, I began to get a better appreciation for this film, and also the that scene that I just mentioned here when they're in the shuttlecraft, because the essentially the shore leave has been cut short, and so Uhura picked them up from Yosemite, and so they're on their way back to the Enterprise, and they're looking in that very intriguingly set up reflection shot in the glass of the shuttlecraft, by the way. But and I'll get to the special effects later as well. But of course, then too, that brought me to another strength of the film, which I wasn't really fully appreciative at the time that I first saw it, which is this is a film that is at its core, this is a film about character. This is a film about character. Not to say that the other films weren't about character, but I would say that this film is so much about character. It is, in fact, maybe the plot to me seems somewhat maybe it's still quite fascinating with the Shakari or the Great Barrier and Cybok even and right Nimbus 3 and Paradise City and all that stuff. Of course, that's very intriguing, but the I think the core strength of this film, and I'm not the first one to say this, it's been mentioned so many times prior to me, but the core strength is the way in which it is depicting the characters. And to be specific, it is the characters of Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. And when thinking of that, and thinking about those scenes in this film which portray the various aspects of that triumvirate or that trio, whether it be how they react when they're together or how they respond when they are alone and they are bereft of the two others that make up this trio unit. When we see those various versions, and also we understand that they can withstand any type of, say, prism of emotional experience, whether it be humor, comedy, intense space battle, strategic planning, or personal tragedy, or quiet triumph, or just letting loose and relaxing, or just trying to quote unquote shoot the breeze and just joke around, or whatever the case may be. We see that those scenes in the film are, I think, that is, it's not just the strength of the film, but the more I watch this film, and as I say, there are a number of things that I think are okay, but I think I'll try to get to that. But even if one were to say that, then I think another thing to say is that this film has not just among its the film itself some of the great Kirk McCoy Spock moments in this film, but arguably this film contains some of the greatest Kirk Spock McCoy moments in any story of Star Trek. And to take one step further, there is a scene involving Dr. McCoy and something that we understand was something that happened between him and his father that happens somewhat later in the film. And this is where Cybok is essentially confronting each of the three with their most painful experience in their life of some sort. And for McCoy, therefore, we understand it is this moment of extreme pain that his father was feeling on a sick bed, and in order to relieve his father's suffering, whom he loved so much, he decided to very peacefully end his life. And then, of course, we understand after this very tragic event occurred that somehow or another a cure was discovered for the illness that his father was suffering from. So this has compounded his pain and suffering throughout the years. Now, this is perhaps um, this is perhaps one of the most startlingly moving and very complex and very uh, um, uh, deep rooted character moments in any Star Trek story that I have ever seen. And it is a powerful scene like this. I mean, the other scenes too are quite potentially quite powerful. This is an example of how great this film is. Now, it houses these moments. Now, of course, there are other moments too that I'm like, okay, that's interesting. But I can say that about any other Star Trek film as well. And I think I've tried my best with some of the films that we discussed before. But this is my way of saying that I have come around on this film, and I totally get when people say something like, "Oh, it's the film about finding God or something, or what does God need with a starship, etc." So I get that line of thinking, although it's of course, as we know, it's not really God that they find at the center of the galaxy beyond the Great Barrier and the Shakari. It's not quite God. At least we think it's not God. It's some kind of some kind of glowing thing, right? Ooh, that's my little god alien impression there. Ooh, so that's what they find at the center of the galaxy. So and what was I saying? So yeah, so I get that type of criticism people might have, although I would say it's not quite God that they find. So that it's a little bit. I think there's a lot of room for discussion on that front. I also get maybe the humor is a bit off on some places, and I totally get that. Although I would say too that some of the humorous bits in some of the other films might seem a bit off as well. So, humor is also a pretty difficult thing to catch. And of course, humor is something that might be stale to some, but also quite warm and inviting to others. I can give you an example. The scene that I think for me is like is the one where Sulu and Chekhov are lost in the woods, and we understand too. This is the park? What is it? Mount Rushmore, and they have to go back to the Enterprise because shore leave has been cut off, and so Uhura checks in with them on the communicator, and so they don't want to reveal that they're lost in the woods. So Sulu says, "Oh, we're caught in a blizzard," and then Chekhov does, "Oh," and then and so I kind of think, oh, okay, I'm not laughing out loud when I see that scene, but I saw this film with my little boy, with my son, and he was laughing so hard when that scene came. It was just that was one of the funniest things for him, and so that made me. That made me grin. Not necessarily the scene itself, but the fact that okay, this is something that it might not necessarily be giving me all the biggest chuckles in the world, but it's giving someone reason to laugh. So okay, that's something that's really quite inspiring, in fact. So I get those sorts of criticisms, but again, humor is a really interesting and quite mysterious thing sometimes. And then, of course, I should say too that while maybe some of the scenes of humor fall flat for me personally, there are other scenes that are really quite funny, laugh out loud funny. For example, the interactions between Bones and Spock in particular are quite funny. You know, the whole illusion, you know, especially when they're in the woods um, another scene too that was kind of like, you know, I know the ship like I know the back of my hand. You know, Scotty and the you know, it doesn't really get to me, that particular scene. But again, my son was just laughing hysterically when that scene came up. So again, humor is a very, I think, wonderful, mysterious, and wonderful thing. Let's put it that way. And so that's something that yeah. So that's that part. And then of course the other maybe other main criticisms might be, for example, the treatment of the Enterprise. When I say that the Enterprise does seem to be getting somewhat short shrift from a certain point of view, because it's it's depicted as being not just not run down but falling apart. It needs a great deal of repair work. The springs are kind of the captain's log kind of fall from the panels, and things need repair and the like. And so, in that way, it does feel like a different type of story in a way, because we've always relied upon the beauty and grace and great fortitude of the wonderful ship construction that is the Enterprise. And she has provided some incredible moments from the crew's history all the way up to Star Trek 3. And so there's a certain deal of reliance and grace and beauty to the ship. And so when we see her in this type of almost disrepair, in a way, it does feel a little bit off. However, on the contrary, I also get too that there is this way that the ship, we see more of the ship. It is a new ship, right? It's the A. So it might not be the same ship in terms of the continuity of the actual ship. It's not the refitted prior Enterprise, we get it, but it's still Enterprise in name and indeed in spirit from a certain perspective. So we do get the inner corridors of the ship, you know, with all the way with those wonderfully, absurdly constructed yellow pipes on the walkway there, which I really like. You have to walk over those things, or jump over them as in terms of Sulu. And what a great a show of physical prowess against Hulu. I love the commentary about how he doesn't have a sword or foil here, but he still managed to. And then he talked about how George Takei was incredibly physically fit. And I seem to recall to George Takei, he talked about, I think, when he was a guest on a talk show, he talked about how he would wake every time every morning he would do, what was it, over 100 push-ups or something like that. So I think it was even more. So that's an incredible amount for anyone who knows the difficulty of doing push-ups. I certainly do, but but those pipes and those wonderfully absurdly placed pipes there. We get also the what I guess it's the shaft, and of course the boots come into play, and going from deck to deck to get there. Lots of decks apparently in this world of this new Enterprise A, and then we go to the observation deck, which is a kind of, it has this feel of it feels almost next genny, and I mean, if I mean, like Guinan, I think would feel right at home in that type of environment. It does have that lovely next generation feel to it, and of course the ship's wheel, which is a really nice touch. And so we get, therefore, although I might feel sometimes the Enterprise does get short shrift, on the other hand, the Enterprise does get a lot of screen time, which is really lovely. And so so it has that kind of plus and minus feel, at least to me personally. And then there might be the other critical point, which is the special effects area. The special effects, I think, are not of the same, say, impact visual impact as, say, the special effects that we had seen from ILM in previous Star Trek films. So they do feel a bit maybe somewhat when compared to those other films, it might feel somewhat jarring, and they do feel very jarring. I remember that first scene involving the bird of prey, and what was it? Um, what was it? The satellite. Pioneer 10, I think it's the satellite, right? And Claw, and Vix, right. So all this great Klingon vibe energy is there, of course, in the Klingon bird of prey, and I mean we call it now the Klingon bird of prey. I think there might have been some. I mean I should. Those of you who know Star Trek probably are just saying, we shouldn't say Klingon. It probably maybe Klingon slash Romulan, perhaps. Okay, right. So we'll just call it the Klingon bird of prey. But the yes, so we get when I first saw that scene, I remember that in the theater too. It felt off, and it felt because it had that stop motion effect look to it, and so it does feel off. And there are some scenes too that do feel somewhat off in terms of the outer space scenes. But again, now that I look back on the film, it is not an outer space movie per se. It is, of course, a film taking place in space. I get that, but it's a film about the characters, and so almost in an interesting way, the outer space scenes are kind of, as I say, almost secondary. And two, we have moments that even though the space scenes might not necessarily be totally up to ILM standards, let's put it that way, they're not totally like, I don't know, what's the phrase, god awful. They're not bottom of the barrel stuff. I mean, they're good. They're not the greatest things ever, but they're good. I mean, there's one scene in particular of the outer part of the head area of the bird of prey kind of tilts like that, and you hear the on the soundtrack the woo like that, which is an interesting take on an earlier shot that we'd seen in parts 3 and part 4, with the close-up of that head area part of the ship. It's from a different angle and the ship actually tilts, which is an interesting detail. And then there's the kind of the look of the torpedoes. I mean, the gone are this lovely kind of sparkling glowing red effect, and now they're just like these glowing green balls with a trail and just choo, that kind of feel to it. So it does feel a little bit off, but it is a film, as I say, about character, and those scenes I think are serviceable, and two, it does have that type of uh, of well, actually, I'll save off on that point when I late a little bit later. But they are serviceable. Let me put it that way, and they are serviceable. I think enough to go along with the excitement of the film. And there's one sequence in particular that's really exciting about how they're leaving. It would the shuttlecraft at this point is the Galileo, right? And by this time, Cybok has essentially captured Kirk and crew, and essentially now everyone is part of the what is it, Army of Galactic Peace, and now they're going back on the shuttlecraft to the Enterprise, and of course now the Bird of Prey is also on the attack. So in order to be able to protect the ship from the bird of prey potential attack, but also allow for the shuttlecraft to enter into the back, they have to lower the shields, right? But in order to lower the shields, they risk being attacked by the ship. And so they have to lower the shields and raise the shields in just enough time to be able to protect themselves. But in order to do that quickly enough, they have to forego the use of the of they have to forego the use of the locking onto the shuttle to lead the shuttle into the shuttle bay, but instead Sulu has to pilot the shuttlecraft manually. So he's asked, have you done this before? And he says, actually, it's my first attempt. So that's a very funny part too. And he's good, really. that lovely smile from Sulu, by the way. That's another funny. I mentioned that there are moments that maybe weren't laugh out loud for me. That's a laugh out loud moment for me, very much so. But and I remember too, the theater was just roaring with laughter at that moment. And so that's an exciting moment. And again, warts and all, that's a really exciting moment in the film. And the whole timing of first Claus, you hear, oh, Kurt's on the shuttle, so he's trying to target the shuttlecraft first, and he misses because Sulu, and it crashes into the shuttle. And oh, they're going to warp speed now. So that's so again. Even if it's not ILM standard, still I still do get a kick out of that and other scenes. Um, and yeah, speaking of that too, as I said, this film might not necessarily be a outer space movie for me. In other words, we don't there's not enough of the risk and the feel and the depth of, say, when they go into the Great Barrier. We're meant to understand that the Great Barrier, no one can breach the Great Barrier, but they seem to have been able to do so with relative ease. They just go and like, oh, that's it, we made it, you know. So there's and just like these inkwell like clouds and things you go through, and that's it. So there doesn't seem to be that risk or heft or weight to that type of space related physics, unlike, say, some of the other films where we actually felt the weight of space. I would draw your attention to something like Star Trek: The Motion Picture, or even Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan and the Nebula. So there's not any of that feel to it for me. But again, it's not an outer space film in that way. I think that's okay. Finally, let me say too that I mentioned earlier that I really began to appreciate this film more when I was also at the same time rediscovering or relearning or really learning about the original series of Star Trek. And I mention that too because this film to me feels like a TOS episode. It does feel like an original series episode to me. It has that beginning, middle, and end feel to it. Sometimes the original episodes too have this way of introducing, say, key, I don't know, family members of the crew, or key, say, emotional relationships of the crew, all the way from one of the earliest episodes, and Dr. McCoy, and a relationship that he had in the past, you know, that sort of stuff. And so in that spirit, we have the introduction of Cybok, who is, oh, he's my brother. He's not your brother. No, he's my half brother. So that kind of sudden emergence of a really significant family or emotional relationship from one's past. So that is something that is very much, I think, part of the old series. It kind of picks up and then not to be seen ever again, kind of thing. So I kind of like that. It has this lovely, almost earnest quality to it. And we'll get to the relationship between Cybok and Spock a little bit later when we have time. But and then two, the what was it? Oh yes, and then the idea of this being like an episode, it I think really helps to. Well, also, I'm sorry. It feels too like an episode, and I don't mean that in any negative critical light. I mean that quite sincerely. It does feel like an episode of Star Trek because also this is a one of the first. This is the first on-screen adventure of now Captain Kirk, or now returned to Captain Kirk. And so Captain Kirk's adventures with the USS Enterprise on that earlier 5-year mission are now being reignited. And so in that vein too, it does feel like this is another story of the crew. And two, we will understand that this is, of course, there might be some other stories that you can read or listen to in other media, perhaps. But in terms of the actual uh, maybe new mission of the crew, this is pretty much it. This is pretty much it, and we'll have one more final hurrah in the next film, of course, when we talk about the undiscovered country. But we're talking about just a mission, something that they're doing, under orders from Fleet Admiral Bob, right? Fleet Admiral Bob Bennett, right? Fleet Admiral Bob, and that wonderful zoom out when he's talking to Kirk on the telecom there. Go climb a rock, Bob. Right. So, and so the what was it? But this is a beginning, middle, and end type of adventure, which is like an episodic adventure. And in that way, it's like it's it has this almost a refreshing quality to it that over the years I've come to respect and admire. Now, what I say is, I love the earlier films. I love the earlier films. I hope that I've made myself clear in my love of the films when we've talked about them in live discussions or live stream discussions. But they do have a type of continuity to them, even in the sort of transmigration quality from one to two. There is a continuity, and of course, in particular, people mention the trilogy, two, three, and four, and it is a type of trilogy. Five, while it does have links to that, references to that, it is very much its own story. And it very much is set apart from that earlier trilogy, and indeed, it is set apart from what we might see in later stories of Star Trek. So, in that way, it does feel very refreshing, and also it does have parallels to the motion picture. Maybe the motion picture might be seen, although I do argue that it does have a continuity. Motion picture also arguably too is its own standalone story, and it also has an idea about searching for something, meaning of existence, some kind of godlike energy of some sort, etc. Jerry Goldsmith. So of course, this parallel between one and five has been made by many astute observers and reviewers of Star Trek. So I'm not creating any new ground here. Of course, I acknowledge that, but so there is that parallel. But that parallel, I think, is also very strong and true because of the fact that maybe one, but in particular five, could be said to be its own standalone story. And indeed, actually, standalone stories, I think, do have their place. It does have it's something that you can turn to. Not all the films have to be the trilogy type of storyline. So you can watch this film and not necessarily have seen the rest of the films. And in that way, too, it's episodic. When you go back to the series, you can kind of go to any episode and catch up with the story. I mean, for the most part, maybe there might, if you have the two-parter, the menagerie, that might be a different situation, and maybe you might need to see the cage, etc. But for the most part, you can watch any episode of Star Trek, the series, and kind of go with the flow of it. And that feeling has its resonances here when I watch Star Trek Five. So this is a film I think that can be watched by anyone who is even maybe not a fan of Star Trek or new to Star Trek, etc. So it has a lot of things. It has criticisms towards it, and I get that, and I've felt that way. But I can also see the other sides of the coin when it comes to those discussions. And also, I say too, I can see the other sides of the coin. And when I say that, I can really emphasize that this is not my favorite Star Trek film, but it is a film that I really admire because of certain reasons that I've mentioned just now, but I'll try to get into some more reasons as we go along. But I really respect and admire this film very much. And as I say, there are moments that just were laugh out loud funny for me. Um, okay, so let's go to the live chat here. Oh, Eric Peter's a god should have turned out to be Trelane. Yes, yes, that would have been interesting. Galactic Army of Light. Yes, thank you, thank you. What did I say? Galactic Army of Peace. I said yeah, Galactic Army of Light. Thank you, Neo Blissy. I stand corrected. Well done, my friend. Let's see. Zyrother says earlier, 4 is much more a comedy than 5. And then Eric Pieper continues, the comedy elements were amped up here because 4 was such a big hit. And I think too, according to according to like the commentary track, or one of the commentary tracks, apparently William Shatner wanted a darker film, actually, but that the studio executives had insisted to show more comedy in the film. And so, whatever the case may be, I don't know if that's, I'm not 100% sure what the details of that are, because I can definitely imagine that, you maybe some comedy elements might have been integrated at the start. I'm just hypothesizing here, but in any event, whatever the case may be, yes, it does feel like there is a an attempt to emphasize the comedic aspects of the dynamics between and among the crew members. So we have, for example, Uhura and Scotty at the beginning with the dinner and the, like eating the kind of chips dinner kind of thing, and Scotty's just standing there like, eating, and then we see some of the other crew members with their feet on the console of the Enterprise. I don't know. I don't know if I, yeah, but I mean, you don't put your feet on. I mean, has that ever happened elsewhere? I'm not sure. I'm trying to recall. I'm sure it has been. I'm not remembering correctly. Please let me know if there's been any instance of that. So there's the interaction between Uhura and Scotty. There's also, I mentioned, too, Sulu and Chekhov, and their bond, their friendship is, I think, very much emphasized for the very start and also the very end, right? What does he say? She has wonderful muscles, right? So, um, right. So there's that element. Um, I, One could say too that the other crew members are actually getting a little bit more to do. Although that's another thing too that sometimes I felt a little bit. I'm actually not quite sure about even now, which is the other crew members, except for Scotty, perhaps. When they encounter Cybok, they are in a way they become enemies, and they become part of Cybok, and thanks to Neo Blissey, who corrected my mistake, members of, I assume, the Galactic Army of Light, right? So, and so they, um, what was it? They are not necessarily trying to attack or kill Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, but they're just trying to chase after them in the tunnels of the Enterprise, or something. So I always felt that to be, from that perspective, I always felt that to be a little bit kind of shocking, because it was, oh, these are the beloved members of the crew, and so they are kind of almost antagonistic towards Kirk, Spock, and McCoy. And indeed, in fact, I understand that earlier in the script process, the idea was considered to have even Spock and McCoy too go on the other side and go against Kirk in this way. But I think that was vetoed by certain in the creative process. I think DeForest Kelly and others thought that this was going too much against their character, and so therefore the emphasis would be on the three of them. And I think we see the moment too where even at the point where one could say in the film that Spock and McCoy have released or relinquished their pain, thus becoming quote unquote brainwashed by Cybok. Still, right, Spock is able to say, I'm my place is here with Kirk, and McCoy, who probably is the most tempted of the two of them to join Sabak, he still refuses and decides to stay. And so there is still this idea of loyalty to the three. And so that feeling of loyalty, I thought, was lost when we're talking about the other crew members, except for, of course, was it STA and BACK, stand back, right? What are you standing around? Right. So, of course, Scotty appears to have a sense of loyalty, maybe not necessarily to the three of them per se, but more of a loyalty to the ship, perhaps. But still, the other crew members, I thought it was kind of a shocking thing to see them turn that way when I was a kid. So in that way, it might seem to be a bit of a kind of a weird story. However, we have seen stories in the past in Star Trek episodes where this kind of quote unquote turn has occurred, whether it be through maybe infection or some other story like that in a past episode of Star Trek, or the like. And so they're not, also, it's not a kind of a mutiny story per se. I mean, they're not I don't think they mean it in a certain way to try to. I don't want to excuse what it is they're doing, because what they're doing is actually quite serious, but essentially hijacking this starship, but or aiding and abetting the hijacking of a starship. But um, uh, uh, it, uh, this does have its echoes in the past. Also, it's not necessarily that they become quote unquote bad people or bad guys, right? Cybok isn't a bad guy. He is quote unquote the villain of the piece, or he's the antagonist of the piece. But one can argue that he is not at all a type of violent, aggressive. Well, he might be aggressive, but he's not a violent figure, or he doesn't wish or seek violence in any form or manner. When he understands that Paradise City is being attacked, he says, "No, this is not what I wanted." Right? He's very emotional about this. He wanted a non-violent type of um, of takeover of the ship, and they don't try to shoot or kill the crew, or they don't try to shoot or kill. At least I don't recall that they do. They might use weapons, of course, to try to forcibly get what they want, but they don't. Which is in and of itself a type of, it could be said to be a crime of assault, or a tort. But the my point is that one can say that Cybok's mission is not truly villainous. He does have his echoes, like Christian said earlier in the chat, to Khan from Wrath of Khan in part two. And I do see that he is like a Khan figure. Khan, and in that film, as I recall, took over a starship himself with his own very loyal crew. And he could be said to be a type of of a type, not maybe messiah figure, I'm not sure, but he's almost, people religiously follow him. And so the Botany Bay crew, right, religiously follow him. So this is a what do you call it? There's echoes and parallels there, but perhaps unlike Khan, Cybok has, I think, almost in an interesting way, a almost warped sense of peace about him, and that he'll use almost aggressive tactics to try to get at an ultimate objective that, from his viewpoint, might seem to be totally peace loving and worthwhile. What he is doing too is he is gaining loyalty by allowing people to share their pain, whether this is brainwashing or whether this is actual therapy, some kind of maybe therapy or psychotherapy, or maybe if it's a type of what's the phrase? Um, in other words, if it has a real sense of genuine wanting to help people rather than take control, there might be elements of both. Who knows? But there is also a sense of the possibility that Cybok truly is sympathetic to the plights and pains of the people that he encounters, and that he is not forcibly asking people to join him, but rather through this relinquishing of their pain or relieving of their pain, they truly want to follow him. So whether that is forcible or not is something that is part of the mystery of Cybok. But arguably, he could be said to, or he could be seen to, not be villainous at all in that respect. And so if that's the case, then that makes the turn of people like Uhura and Chekhov and Sulu, in particular, maybe a little bit more palatable to my cinematic tastes. Let me put it that way. I remember, yeah, when I was a kid, that really upset me. There was a moment where Sulu enters the bridge after he's been brainwashed, so to speak, air quotes, and they've returned from Nimbus, and he goes to the console, and Chekhov is like, what's going on? What are you doing? And so I remember that was such a shocking scene for me, because I knew Sulu, with his smile, he was just doing something that seemed very, very off to me. But again, over time, as I say, going back to, say, the previous episodes, for example, that is something that, oh, okay, this is something that we not haven't. This is not the first time we're seeing something like this, perhaps. So, yeah. So that was my take there. Let's see. Okay, so let us go to. All right. Let's go to. Great. Zyrother says, I never listened or cared what reviewers say, I will form my own opinion. Um, All right, so let's go to the film itself. Now we've spoken a little bit, I've gone all over the place here, but let me try to get back to, so there's the reemergence of the great Jerry Goldsmith music, which is great, by the way. The music is stellar. It's including the kind of the introduction at the end, you're like, row, row, da, 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 dun dun, right? That dun dun, right? I think that's the first time we're hearing the dun dun, da 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 dun dun dun. So we get the dun dun in the next gen films, right? But here, I think it's the first time, is it not, where we get the dun dun? We didn't get the dun dun in the motion picture, if I recall. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but we didn't get. I think it was, yeah. So we get the dun dun Jerry Goldsmith, and then we get that wonderful theme, which turns into a lovely transition theme when we get from the space field to what we understand is Yosemite and El Capitan, and of course we have the captain climbing El Capitan. So it's a great transition there. And here we have the philosophy of the characters, the three of them, espoused in the scene, I think, quite remarkably. So we have McCoy, and he's looking from a distance, and he's just so frustrated because of his worry and playing with life. Recklessly in his view, and we understand, therefore, he is a doctor. He has this passionate view about life and about the beauty and importance of maintaining the value of life. So this is espoused in those lines. If I'm going to be starting to talk to myself. Oh, in that wonderful viewfinder, it looks like a prop from I don't know, from. That TV series V. I don't know, but I don't, right. But it looks so cool. I want one of those. And then you have the actual climbing itself, and Captain Kirk, now Captain Climbing. And why climb the mountain? Because it's there. This is another great Captain Kirk, a Kirk moment. That's really wonderful. And then Spock with his almost ingenuity with those turbo boots, and I like he's trying to give advice to Kirk. In order to be able to be successful, you must be one with the Rock. I do not think you understand the gravity of your situation. Um, right? Gravity's on the forefront of my mind. And so this idea of the dual nature and the sort of playful banter between the two of them, and there's a real warmth here, which I think is represented by a moment that's going to come immediately after this, because Kirk slips and he falls, and we see, this is, if this is El Capitan, he's climbing, and Spock goes up to the you must be one with the Rock. And then and then Spock does dive, and then the feet, and the wonderful feet, like this, and then we get, it's very much like something out of, I don't know, like James Bond, I don't know, For Your Eyes Only or something. If there had been the Kirk grown from Search for Spock, I think that would have been perfect For Your Eyes Only touch. But I digress. So anyway, he falls with a wonderful back screen projection for the two of them, and then, right, the capturing of the high bones. Mind if we stop by for dinner or something like that. So the idea here is Kirk has narrowly avoided death once again, and this will be returned to in a scene somewhat later, when the three of them, Bones, Kirk, and Spock, are sitting together around the campfire and eating the beans, which is a secret family recipe, generation handed down for generations of McCoys. And so, if you insult the beans, you're insulting, right? You're insulting his family, and so therefore, they partake in the beans, and there's a kind of a secret ingredient. And McCoy, I should say, mentions his father, which I'm not sure if that was done on purpose. Probably was, because again, his father will become a really important person that we will be seeing in a later scene in the film. But he mentions his father and the beans and the McCoys and the secret ingredient. Have any more of that secret ingredient? It's alcohol, yes. And then they get steadily drunk. Row your boat, and the idea here too is we have Bones being angry at Kirk for playing with life and being reckless with life. Human life is too valuable to be to fool around with and play around with. And here we have that great philosophy once again of Kirk, and indeed of the three, and the existence of the three. And he says, he knew, Kirk did, he knew that even though it was a close call, he knew that he wouldn't die. And he says, how come? How did you know? And there's a great close up, the campfire look on his face. And he says, I've always known, right? I'll die alone. I've done that. I'm sorry, let me do that. I've always known I'll die alone. Right. So the idea here is that the fact that he was together with his three friends, or two friends, I should say, the three of them were together. He knew that he was safe. And also this idea of there being shore leave, and shore leave is something where they're supposed to take a break from work, and Bones mentions this too. We're together, we get on each other's nerves, we're in high stress situations, and yet when we have shore leave, what do? We decide to spend it together, right? People like us don't have families, and but also the idea that, right, we will understand that actually, maybe they do have a family bond that's quite strong indeed, which is interesting too, because when Bone says people like us, right, or whether it's mentioned here the fact that they don't have families, later we'll see their memories too of actually key parts of their family life, and the fact that, say, maybe it's each Spock and McCoy, each memory, each pain having to do with their father, and the fact that maybe there's a break from their father that causes the deepest pain of their lives, respectively. For Spock, it's also Sarek and his belief that Sarek somehow disregards him because of the fact that he is half human. And so there is that break or division between father and son. There's, of course, that tragic element of McCoy and his father's relationship in that memory. So that might signify to them that maybe they don't have families in that sense, in terms of that loss. But of course, we will understand that the word family here has a very special meaning that will be recognized, I think, by the film's end. Right? I thought you said that people like us don't have families, right? Is asked of Kirk. And so here at this scene, he might think that they don't have families. But of course, maybe by the film's end, Kirk and others might have a different answer to that question. A really lovely turn, by the way. So in this scene, and also, of course, I'm forgetting one very, 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 very important element of this scene, which is another. Well, I'm forgetting two elements, right? Because Spock is bringing one key element. He brings what looks like a lightsaber, but in fact, you press the button, and lo and behold, it isn't a lightsaber, but it is. Say it with me, everyone. What does he have? 3, 2, 1. It is a marshmallow. Yes, it's a marshmallow. So, what is this deal with the marshmallow? And so I understand that if you want to know the secret of the marshmallow, what's going on with the marshmallow, why does he call it a marshmallow? I think the novelization might hold the answers to your questions. So, or at the very least, you can listen to the commentary track, or one of the commentary tracks, and the Okuda commentary track, and so you can listen to maybe some of the secrets there of that. But in any event, the yes, the marshmallow is a very important detail, and also row, row, row your boat. So there are a number of songs about this idea of camping. Spock is studying about camping. So what are some of the rituals of camping? One of them being, what do we do after we partake in the marshmallow? And Bones asks, and so Spock says, I think we should sit around. I understand people would sit around and just sing some kind of campfire song. And so that gets Bones and especially Kirk a lot of excitement and joy. And they say, oh, and I love the line of Kirk, I haven't sung around the campfire since I was a boy in Iowa. And so I love that too. There's another reminder about how he's from Iowa. And also, too, the idea that he says that he didn't sing anything since he was a boy. So, what does that mean? Assuming that that's true, what this means is that this moment is, for Kirk, a boyhood memory relived or come to life once again, something that he hasn't done since he was a boy. So can you imagine the things, like, when I think back on my own child, what did I do when I was a kid that I'm not doing now? If I did that again many years after that, the kind of joy and feeling of freedom and liberation I'd feel, I don't know, I can't even begin to imagine. So that type of feeling, that lovely boyhood, just giddiness comes through. And as I say too, this is another thing. When I saw this as a kid, I was like, "Oh, this is kind of maybe kind of corny." But now, many years after the fact, maybe I'm getting closer in age to Kirk and Bones and Spock in the scene. So, although maybe not Spock, but maybe more of the others. But in any event, the um, yes, so I'm as I can begin to appreciate these little trying to maybe relive these moments of childhood or that sort of thing. So that is, yeah, that this is something that it really helped me to really fall in love with this film, and in particular moments like this. And then they try to go into row your boat, and it doesn't quite work because it's those lyrics, right? Row your boat. Actually, think about it. Those lyrics are actually quite difficult to understand. Actually, so I'm not totally unsympathetic to Spock's situation here. Like, what does this mean? What does this song mean? Actually, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, life is but a dream. And like Spock's like, wait a minute, I don't get it. If I'm rowing my boat gently and merrily down the stream, how does it suddenly lead me to the fact that life is but a dream? What does that mean? Does that mean that when I'm rowing my boat merrily and gently, I'm going to wake up and I'm going to find out my life is actually some kind of horrid nightmare? Is that the plot of this song? And that's so all of these possibilities I think of row your boat, but and in fact perhaps I don't know if Row Your Boat has ever been used specifically in, say, a David Lynch film or something like that. I think it would be really perfect. Could you imagine a David Lynch film, row your boat? Could you imagine that? Could you imagine this scene directed by David Lynch? Star Trek Five campfire scene, row your boat sequence directed by David Lynch. Could you imagine, like, row your, and then row, and then they do it in reverse. Row your butt gently down the street. Like twin. Norman Posey. And Spock's like, and then suddenly they're rowing in the boat, and then suddenly it turns into this nightmarish landscape. And Cybok comes, and God, you know, you know, I'm very glad to meet you. That would be so cool. That scene sequence directed by David Lynch, and it's all like down to like row, and then at the end it goes to the campfire, and then Spock's like, "Life is not a dream. Go to sleep, Spock. Go to sleep." No, that's great, and that's the end of it. Yeah, the David Lynch directed version of Star Trek Five. Wow, wow. We could have seen a little bit. I mean, could you imagine Return of the Jedi? Well, but that's anyway. Yeah, that's a total different conversation. But in any event, yes. So life is not a dream, but it could be. But in any event, row your boat. This is also something that is calling back to childhood. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to be quote unquote meaningless. It's just another right, but it is actually filled with meaning. And it's something that is like, oh, this is the row your boat movie. And indeed, many years later, my mom would always say, she'd be in the kitchen or something. Many years after that, and suddenly, I don't know, I just, row. And she would be singing that just to be a specific, make a specific reference to Star Trek Five, and then I just start to row your boat. So it'd be this way of connecting with other people. So in many ways, row your boat is a really powerful thing indeed. So it's great it emerges here, not once but twice. Um, all right, and it's one of those too. To borrow a Star Trek Four thing, it's one of those. If we're talking about Spock's storyline, it's one of those moments where he's trying to learn about human aspects. So it's another how do you feel moment for Spock. He doesn't quite understand it here, but he will understand it by the film's end, perhaps. At least we understand he will, because he is by the end he's actually encourages the song because he's playing like dun 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 dun. By the way, at the end, it's interesting to see Bones' reaction. He's not quite into it. Maybe he's deep in thought or lost in thought, perhaps. But it's interesting to see Bones' reaction at the end. The Grove Brewery, but they're still together. I thought I'd never noticed that until much later. So, but anyway, yes. So that the film goes into these particular elements, but then at the same time we understand too that on Nimbus 3 there is this potential incident that has arisen, a galactic incident, because the representatives of the Romulan representative, Dar, Caitlin Dar, with her wonderful earmuffs. I guess we're meant to, maybe they're covering up what the shape of her ears would have been, because she is Romulan. There's also a Cord, the, right, and then also there's St. John Talbot with his cigarette. And I understand that maybe, according to Denise and Michael Kuda, maybe this is one of the only times you actually see a cigarette in Star Trek. I'm not sure if that's the case, although they do mention too that there is a cigar smoking character, or it's assumed to be a cigar in the next film. But here we have the cigarette, and of course we have David Warner, which is an interesting thing. So David Warner, and then I remember on the commentary, is that Gorkon? So that's of course maybe we'll talk about Gorkon later. But here it's Talbot, and the three representatives here, Federation, Klingon, and Romulan. Apparently to remind us that this was the Nimbus 3 was a type of joint project, almost like an alternative to the Genesis project in an interesting way, but it was a joint project of some kind of a symbol of peace that didn't quite turn out the way that perhaps it was intended, or maybe it was really all the way intended like this and it was just a failed project. But whatever the case, this is a desolate wasteland. But we also understand that the Cybok and his forces have now attacked Paradise City, and for the sole purpose of capturing these three to have them as his prisoners. But I use the air quotes because actually we will understand that this is actually maybe a little bit more of a complex situation than the Federation might realize. And so this leads to the cutting off of shore leave early. Fleet Admiral Bob gives the orders to Kirk, not before there's the idea of the oh, you need I need a shower or something. So in the turbo lift there, and then everything's falling apart. The doors aren't opening correctly, and so the Enterprise is a mess. It's falling apart, and so Fleet Admiral Bob wants to have a seasoned, experienced officer to handle this very delicate galactic situation, and so he is ordered to Nimbus 3. And so therein lies the situation. But then, of course, as Bones reminds us, if you ask me and you haven't, it's bad. We're bound to run into the Klingons, and so and they don't exactly like you. The feeling's mutual. So well, need all the power you can muster, Mister, and that leads to the embarking of the Enterprise on its mission, and then so then we understand that this is setting off a number of events. So Nimbus 3, this mysterious figure we will learn later is Cybok. I think at this point we don't have a name yet for this figure, a Lawrence Luckinbill character, who could have been Sean Connery, I understand, by the way. Could share with me your pain, share it with me, share it with me, William Shatner. So that's my very poor Sean Connery impression. But here we have Lawrence Luckinbill, who's great, by the way. He's one of the great strengths of this film as well. There's a type of energy that he brings to the role of Cybok. But again, we'll talk about that later when we get to the Cybok scene. So the plot is off and running. And then also as I said earlier, we met a little bit of the crew before, during shore leave, and now shore leave is abruptly cut off. Also, we understand too, the other element is the Klingons, and the wonderful coiffed hair of Claw. All right, that's Claw. So it's wonderful, right? So he's just got this, like, oh my goodness, and Vix, that dude, you just want to great. Oh my gosh. So they're off, and so they understand too that this Klingon bird of prey will also be on a collision course with the Enterprise and Nimbus 3. So we have Nimbus, we have this galactic incident, Fleet Admiral Bob, the crew of the Enterprise, this seemingly kind of, I guess, roguish bird of prey, cloaked, and then Cybok, or this particular element. So everything's on a collision course. And what's going to happen? Wow. Only time will tell. But before I get to that, let's go to the score. Not score, but the live chat here. Neil Blissey, yes, thank you very much. The novelization stated that McCoy supposedly, yes, had the computer modified. I know to use Marshmallow in Spock's research materials as a prank. Yes, and indeed, too, that's why in that scene, one could see there was a little bit of a twinkle in McCoy's eyes. Did you see that when he's, oh, a marshmallow? He's kind of smiling. And what was, so there's, it's almost a tender moment from Bones. Yeah. Oh, Scott Johansson says Robin Williams was great at reverse English. Not bad. Daisuke. Thank you very much. Thank you. Marco is here. Hello. Hi Daisuke. Hope you're well. Thank you. Thank you. I'm doing much better now because of this lovely discussion. Thank you. Eric Pieper says Star Trek V: The Last Temptation of Cybok. Wow, that was interesting. Could you imagine Star Trek V, Star Trek V directed by Martin Scorsese, right? And maybe I don't know, maybe like, gosh, what would be a good Martin Scorsese Star Trek V thing? Maybe Cybok and Kirk are talking in the shuttle bay, like, let me do something, or something like that. Maybe talking about the shuttle, and how do you enter the shuttle? You have to go through. What does it say? There's that scene in The Irishman, right? Um, so what is it? So you charge with a gun, with a knife you run, or something like that. So maybe Kirk's going to say something about the shuttle and the Galileo and getting into the shuttle bay and the shields and the cloaked bird of prey, and said, with the shuttle bay, I don't know what it is, but with a shuttle, you run. With a bird of prey, oh gosh, I messed it up. No, it was, with a shuttle, you charge. With a bird of prey, you run, or something like that. I don't know. I messed that up totally, but let's see. My favorite bad functioning elevator in film is definitely in David Lynch's Eraserhead. Jerome Weaselberry, LOL, thank you. Neo Blissy, yes, Sean Connery was intended to be Cybok, but as I said earlier in the chat, he was too busy on The Last Crusade. Yes, Junior! That is you, Junior! The Last Crusade, by the way, the Sean Connery, the umbrella and that's a great moment. Yeah. But yeah, Sean Connery as Cybok, that would have been really interesting. Spock, it's you, Spock. It's me, Cybok. I'm here. I'm laughing. Ha 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 ha. Share with me your pain. Imagine that. This is also would have been after his, I just won the Academy Award for The Untouchables with Brian De Palma. And now I'm here. My director's William Shatner. Give me a gun. I'm not having a gun. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Yes. And Neil, what I was going to say, that's why they named the planet Shakari. That's one of the theories, right? That it could have been a callback to Shakari. It sounds similar to Sean Connery. I've heard a little bit of pushback on that, actually. Maybe on one of the commentaries, it might not necessarily be 100% true, although I do subscribe to that. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Center of the Galaxy. Center of the Galaxy never reached. Although there might have been an episode in Star Trek, the original series, that I'm not remembering, but Center of the Galaxy. Oh. Yes. All right. yeah, there could have been a really cool. But again, Lawrence Luckenbill, I think, has this super energy to the film, which is a different type of energy. It's a different. It's not Ricardo Montalban type of energy. It's not Christopher Lloyd energy. It has this almost like I'm so happy to be here type of energy. Not to say that the other performers didn't have that, but it's this. It's like, how should I put it? He's always smiling. Cybok is, even when there's a serious moment, he's always smiling, which I really appreciate. Cybok is a really fascinating character, and there might be some kind of pushback about, oh, he's the brother or half brother of Spock. Like, what's going on, Sarek? What's going on, Vulcan Princess? Wow, gosh, what was going on there? But anyway, so we have, um, excuse me, we have the this really intriguing backstory. And in fact, too, I think this is a key point that was mentioned, or at least it's described, that Harv Bennett in particular, I understand, really brought up the possibility of having Sybok be the half brother of Spock. If that wasn't the case, then if Sybok was still a Vulcan, but not, say, the brother of Spock or half brother of Spock, what that would have meant in terms of the story is that one would never have bought the bit in the film where Spock has the gun pointed at Sybok, and then Kirk says, "Shoot it!" Right? So that very key moment in the shuttle bay of the Enterprise, because the galley has crashed in, everyone's knocked out. That moment where he grabs the kind of it's like, I don't know what you call that. Is it a gun, or it's like, that it's a gun, but actually it looks like, I don't know. Do you remember in The Empire Strikes Back, the Star Wars films called The Empire Strikes Back? There was a place called Cloud City, and they had these really like tube-shaped droids, these robots, these tube-shaped droids that were like this tall, and they're like tubes, and there's like robot tubes. And I just always thought that gun that they had, the Nimbus guns, um, looked like those tube droids from Empire Strikes Back. But anyways, they grabbed it, and it's the gunfly, and they got that great fight, and wonderful wires. It's like something out of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, or something, and fighting, and Cybok's super strong, shoot it, right, and the gun goes to the Spock, and Spock is hesitant. He could have shot him, but he didn't. I'm talking to Cybok. Talking about Cybok, and Cybok said, for a moment there, I thought you would said like that, and now you're my prisoners. But the point of the brother relationship here is really key, because if that brother relationship was not there, then one would not have bought, perhaps, the idea that Spock would have refused to maybe not carry out a kind of order of Kirk, because here we're talking about a type of takeover, a hostile takeover of the Enterprise, and so it would probably be maybe in keeping, maybe arguably, there might be some room for debate, obviously, but arguably it could be in keeping with Spock's character to protect the Enterprise at all costs, including stopping this particular theory. The fact that he doesn't stop him is a really sticking point. It's a big sticking point. And in fact, Kirk said, "Why didn't you do it?" And that's why Spock in the holding cell makes the revelation that he's my brother. I could not kill a brother, right? I know you don't. He's my half brother. Oh, I've got to sit down on, what is it, the toilet, I think. But anyway, so that is a really important point. Now, of course, it might do stuff with whatever it is, the backstory of Spock and everything that we've known about him thus far. But, and will we hear about Cybok ever again? Right. But in any case, right, again, within the universe of the story, that's how it plays out. And I would say too that it's like it's not. It doesn't. How should I put it? It doesn't. It could have not worked, and arguably it doesn't quite work in terms of that brother relationship. But for me, it doesn't totally hinder the experience, and I can see the workings of it. And also, in an interesting way, it does expand the universe of Vulcan and Sarek as well. And Sarek apparently, right, had these various relationships. So that's another thing, or at least two, actually. And then so it has this weird way of of making the universe feel small because, oh, this is Spock's brother or something, but at the same time it expands the universe in the sort of the Vulcan and Sarek backstory. It's the same thing too, by the way, with the Klingons. The Klingons are also a threat in this film, but we hear no mention of the Romulans, for example. So, but we do have a Romulan representative, Caitlin Dar, who is among the captives. So, one wonders where the Romulans are. But in any event, um, let's see. All right, so we will get to that soon. Okay, so now we have the emergence of the crew onto Nimbus and Paradise City, and how do they get there? So there are a number of things. They need to get there. They have limited time. They understand the bird of prey is on their way. Maybe 1.9 hours, I think Spock says is his count. So they have very limited time. So they have to go quickly, go in, go out. And so in order to do so without being noticed, they land the shuttle nearby, but outside the city itself, so they are unseen, and so they have to get to the city. In order to get to the city, they see an outpost with horses. In order to get to the horses that are at that outpost, they have to trick the guards there. And how do they do that? Uhura does her sand dune dance. In silhouette against the backdrop with her song, almost like a siren singing from the distance, and her song is so powerful that it's so alluring that it brings the people from, oh, it's like, there's like someone, oh, is she naked or something? And it's just they walk towards this vision, and then we understand this is Uhura, and people are waiting there with guns to try to essentially to subdue them. So here is Uhura in action. I should say that Uhura has a lot of scenes like this where she is either in charge of basically bringing the crew back from shore leave. So we see a lot of her there. We see her piloting the shuttlecraft to and from. She's also shuttling the pilot. What is it here? Here it's not the constellation comes later, right? Here it's the Galileo still piloting after this. Kind of feather dance. She then pilots the Galileo into Paradise City, we understand, or near the outskirts at least. I think it's actually in the city, under the orders of Kirk, I think, right? And so we see her a lot in action here. And then, of course, there's that relationship, or hinted at relationship between her and Scotty, which was hinted at too at the end of 4, by the way, when they see the reveal of the Enterprise A, and her hand is on Scotty's shoulder, I think. So there's a little bit of a hinted at romance, I think. But oh gosh. So right, I think this is also. I mean, I think this is a really interesting, exciting moment. Again, hearing the song of Uhura, and of course this is not the first time we hear her sing, and so but we see her and hear her perform here. So I think it's a lovely moment like this, and I don't know, I never really got behind those. Maybe some is she too old or something? I never really got behind those at all. I think it looks really, actually, it looks great, and the moon behind. I mean, it looks, and people say it looks fake or something, but I thought it looked really cool. It looked like a performance, it looked like she was on stage or something. That just looked really cool. And the lighting, I thought the lighting made her look great in that scene. So it was in silhouette and shadow, and the song and the allure, and then the sudden reveal of the people behind, like, right. I've always wanted to write. Right, she always wanted this type of, what she call, a captive audience. So that was a really great moment. So I never got behind those criticisms against this particular scene in Uhura. I thought she was really great here. But then we get into the attack on the city, which is so Mad Max esque. Of course, we had that earlier attack by by Cybok and his forces earlier to capture the representatives in the cantina like scene, and the cat lady. I love that, and the pool table. I mentioned it earlier, and here we get the actual assault by the Federation in many ways, which is. I mean, I don't even know. I don't know if it's meant also to have links to sort of maybe allusions to certain maybe geopolitical events that might have been especially current in the late 1980s at the time. I'm not sure, but in any event, it does have that sense of attack and assault, and also it has the, of course, the Mad Max feel that I was mentioning, and it's Kirk and all these things going Sulu with the gun and firing on the little mirror spotlight there, Spock and the pinch and the jumping of the horses and things, and then going in. Of course, we understand William Shatner is very fond of horse riding, so there's that element, and then going into the fight in the bar with the cat, fighting the cat and throwing the cat into the pool. And then, of course, the reveal that indeed the captives are the captors now, and they Talbot and Cord and Dar are indeed on the side of the Galactic Army of light, not peace. I made a mistake, as Neil Blissey very kindly corrected. It's light, and then we understand Cybok here is in control. Also, we get that great moment of Chekhov pretending to be captain, so we understand that this is maybe a type of being able to carry out one of his dreams. Remember from before, he when he awoke from the hospital bed, he says, he says that rank is admiral. So that is probably hinting at his real ambition of having some kind of position of leadership. Well, here he is at least. For the time being, able to show or pretend that he is in a position of leadership, and he also shows, I think Chekhov does, real sensibility in terms of keeping cool under pressure, in terms of the shields and keeping the shields up, because of the oncoming bird of prey, etc. So he's actually really not bad in terms of his leadership abilities. So really good, in fact. So but then that leads into that great sequence of the shields going up, shields going down, the capturing of the crew, and then going into the emergency plan B, right. Right. So they have to initiate Plan B. What does the B stand for? What does B stand for? B is in barricade. So there's that sequence there, which I alluded to earlier. Before I get to that, though, there is that great moment of recognition between Cybok and Spock on the planet's surface. And here we get the little hint of him being a Vulcan, Cybok is. And then there's a backstory, there's this knowledge. And so. And Cybok is his name, and then we understand that Kirk he acknowledges himself as the true captain. No, I thought Captain Chekhov. Oh yes, very clever, Kirk, very clever. So there's that exchange, but then there is this reveal that maybe there is a bit of a deeper backstory than that is being hinted at here, especially between Spock and Cybok, which you'll understand will be expounded upon when they're back on the Enterprise, and it's revealed that he is indeed the long lost half brother, a kind of outcast of Vulcan society, because his ideas were deemed to be, I guess, too radical or too quote unquote dangerous because they involved emotion. Which explains the fact that Cybok is not an emotionless Vulcan, but he's in fact a Vulcan that is filled with emotion. So this is a really good point indeed. So I think, let's see here. All right. Okay. All right. So I will now go to the chat. And let's see, we will go here. Oh, hello, Aaron is here. Hello, Aaron. It's nice to see you. Tony Cross. I'm in a minority, but I really like Zardos. I saw Zardos when it was broadcast on TV when I was living in the UK. I don't know how old I was when I first saw Zardos. I was quite young. It was quite a, yeah, that's a real, like, how was I, like, I don't know, 10 or 11 when I first saw Zardos on TV? It was British TV, so you could see all the you could see scenes of nudity and stuff on this. It's not, unlike maybe if it were broadcast, say, on US TV at the time, for instance. Meow is here. Final Frontier flooded with production problems. Yes, right. I mean, there were other films too that had production problems, for instance, motion picture, of course. But here, yeah, there were maybe some things worked, some things didn't. I mean, films are like that, right? Films, in fact, right, the one when we think about it, maybe the films that we see that are like the successful films in terms of, I mean, these are probably the very few, and maybe most of the films that go into production do run into issues. So the fact that it came out is actually a pretty big deal. But yeah, again, yeah, totally, yeah, there are definitely production stories, definitely. Oh, I love to, right? I love to the William Shatner, some of the archival interviews that you can find on some of the earlier making of documentaries of this and also the other films. I love the interview with William Shatner is in his office. I guess it's an office because he's got a poster of Star Trek, a huge poster of Star Trek Five on over one shoulder, and over the other shoulder, I think it's what is it, the bookshelf full of what is it, a tech war. So that's all right. It's great. I love it. I love it. It's great. That's a great. I love that office. I love William Shatner. There's also a great thing that he says in one of the later documentaries about how, you know, he talks about maybe the overall financial success of the film Star Trek Five, and maybe it's the area where you'd wanted to hear him. I think the interviewers are trying to get him to say something. Oh, it wasn't a successful film or something like that. But William Shatner, to his wonderful credit, says something. You know, going back and thinking about all the films, I think if you think about all the gross the profit. I think they all even out at the end. So they all, if you even them out, they pretty much all made the same amount of money or something like that. That's great. Yeah. I love William Shatner. Great stuff. Um, yeah, wonderful stuff indeed. Um, all right. Yes, that's right. Neil Blissey. It was a miracle that this film came out as the Writers Guild was on strike at the time. For example, exactly right. So all right, and also right, ILM wasn't available, right, because of their schedule with other projects. So there were a lot of things against this film already, and plus certain core ideas we understand of Shatner weren't either greenlit or the certain writers that he wanted to work with weren't available, or he couldn't come to agreements with the studio, etc. So there were a lot of things already against the film even before shooting was underway. We understand. So all right, so. All right, so let's keep on going with this. Thank you so much for the great chat, by the way. So now we have the beginnings of the takeover of the Enterprise, and so the three of them, the core trio, are captive in the brig, as it were, the holding cell of the Enterprise, while the rest of the crew, save for Scotty, who is conspicuously absent, and now going and taking the ship. And then we understand too that Scotty, then we understand the reveal of Cyborg's relationship to Spock, and then the escape by Scotty, which we referred to earlier. I know the ship like I know the back of my head. Boom. And then the trip through the various decks, and the I love too how when they get and they have to climb, Kirk and Bones are climbing up the ladder, and Spock goes and looks up and is like, "No, I'm not having it." He walks away, and then you think, "Where's Spock?" And he comes down the other direction with the boots. That's great. And I love the bit where Spock's like, "Here, come on, let's go together. Come on." At that moment, it's just so. That's so like best friends. Oh, it's lovely. And the three of them are down, and they go up and they shoot up through the thing. That's really cool. And they almost hit the ceiling. It's almost someone mentioned Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. It reminds me like they have what is it? I forget what's the name of the drink there. The fizzy drink, right? They drink it's like they had like Charlie and Grandpa drinking the drink that makes them right. But they and then so maybe at the end the top there, how do they refuse, how do they manage to not hit the ceiling, but maybe each of them has to burping. So we do see burping, by the way, Cord earlier in the film. So but anyway, the right, so then they go to the observation deck again to try to yes, manage and get control of the Enterprise, etc. And then at the same time we understand that the plot is revealed. I forgot to mention this. Cybok makes an announcement to the entire crew that their mission is to find Shakari, right, the center the galaxy, and they have to breach the Great Barrier, and so the Great Barrier has never been breached. So you understand that this is some kind of form of energy or something. The Great Barrier at the center of the galaxy. I don't know how well this fits into the world of Star Trek that we have known up to now, and perhaps beyond this. But in any event, this is the setup and the storyline, and so the idea too of maybe there's this idea of heaven or God or Eden. Um, at the center. And so the idea of finding God or finding heaven, which is the key, which is further expanded on when Cybok finds the three of them in the observation deck. And so this is, and that wonderful reveal in the shadow and light. And so this is the this is the kind of mission of Cybok taking this ship here. So what are they going to do? What are they going to do? So then we get to the sequence involving finding the pain. So we mentioned earlier the sequence with Bones, and I will say it again. This is one of the key sequences of all of Star Trek. I would say that it probably maybe the more that it maybe ranks up there as maybe one of the top five sequences in any Star Trek story, at least that I've seen ever. So this is really very powerful stuff, very emotional, very powerful, and the fact too that you see the two of them too, Spock and Kirk, looking on. Oh my goodness, this is, yeah, this is incredible stuff. And then followed up shortly after by the revelation of Spock and his feelings towards his father and his half human heritage. And then we have Kirk, interestingly enough, refusing to share his pain, right? Because it's another great Kirk moment. This is a moment that, this is a film that has so many Kirk moments. It's really wonderful, right? He explains here, this is, right, what is it going to solve, right? Something about regret, maybe I should have, I'm going to mess up the line, but that I turned left when I really should have turned right, or vice versa. And then the idea too here about making mistakes is human. Making mistakes is what makes us who we are. And pain, right? This is something that is also what makes us who we are. Pain. I need my pain. This is to me like this is to me so powerful, because it is in actuality, the more I think about it, it feels like on the one hand Kirk is really reaffirming his humanity, because he's saying, I need my pain. And pain is maybe something that can be said to be very much something, especially when you think about human Vulcans, etc. This is very much a human thing. So an emotional pain, that's what he's speaking about. And so this is very much maybe a further reestablishment of Kirk's humanity in this wonderful Kirk way. However, at the same time, what's so poignant about this too is it almost is in a manner of speaking, almost maybe anathema, or maybe almost not in keeping with the Kobayashi Maru type of philosophy that Kirk had espoused or had expressed in, say, past films. He doesn't believe in a no-win scenario. He doesn't believe in a no-win scenario, but he cherishes, he needs his pain. So actually, maybe now that I think about it, maybe they're more in sync than I'm giving you credit for, because perhaps the idea of pain, the idea of needing that kind of emotional drive, is what drives him to want to find any solution he can, even in a no-win solution, like in a no-win scenario, like a Kobayashi Maru scenario. So maybe actually they are more in sync than I'm giving you credit for. But it's interesting to make these right. Just to quote Kirk's quoting Spock in Star Trek 2. I'd like to think that there always are possibilities. So anyway, it's really a fan. And Floydian Pink here says Kirk, Spock, and McCoy are like the ego, super ego in id, and I think that discussion Floydian Pink brings up really quite nicely. That is also very much a lovely triumvirate setup. It's actually quite perfect in many ways. So, but it's very intriguing how Kirk refuses to reveal part of himself, and. Yeah, actually, I was going to say something about the Nexus, but yeah, don't get me started on the Nexus. But any event, this is a really, I think, one of the core moments, a core Kirk moment, and it's also a reminder of really how great this film is, because it's showing. And what I love too is there is this kind of there's a kind of, maybe, how should I put it, reputation that this film, in my view, seems to have gained over the years because it's a William Shatner directed production starring William Shatner, and maybe it might seem like it is therefore William Shatner focused or Kirk focused. At least that might be the impression. However, however, looking at scenes like this, that argument I would say falls on its face because these scenes, Spock, McCoy, and then Kirk, I mean, there's a Kirk action, don't get me wrong, there is. And Kirk is, in many ways, the star of the show. But he's also sidelined. Cybok and Spock's relationship is on the fore in a number of scenes. These scenes with McCoy in particular showing its emotional range, these are really powerful scenes. And then, of course, the other scenes involving some of the other crew, etc. And then the Cybok storyline, etc. So there is a lot of non-Kirk stuff going on here. So I really want to just applaud the screenwriters and the creative voices, and that brought this story that is actually not so Kirk centric as one might think. It is a it is a film that is driven by Captain Kirk. Don't get me wrong, but it also has this room for a type of ensemble piece. So I really enjoyed that very much. Meow says, I think Shatner had a good understanding of those character relations and interactions. Yes, that is a really, really good point. That is a really, really good point. I think he did too. And it was never about how it served him, his character, but it was how they grew with each other. And it felt very well balanced. It still feels very well balanced, and I love that bit too, where Spock refuses to go with Cybok, and then McCoy, he hesitates, but he refuses to go as well, and so they remain loyal. But at the same time, they also understand, and it's also an interesting way, the needs of the many outweighs the needs of the few, or the one philosophy too, because then Kirk understands. Listen, if we're going to go through the Great Barrier, you're going to need my help. So it's or if you're going to go through, if not, I'm sorry, not go through the Great Barrier, but if you're going to go down to Shakari, then we might as well do it by the book, right? So not the not hours can seem like days by the book, but I think a different book here. So there are a lot of books in Starfleet, but that makes sense because Starfleet is this really big thing. There shouldn't be just one book; there should be many books. But in any event, so we do have this situation. They go through the Great Barrier through this like inkwell thing. It's like, oh, it's Great Barrier. Oh, we can't go. But it's just a state of mind or something. You just go, oh, that's the Great Barrier. All right, so they go through it. Seems pretty. I don't know. I mean, I've never driven a starship, so maybe when I say it seems easy, I'm being quite arrogant, being quite naive. But I don't know. It seems like, was it really that difficult to go through the Great Barrier? I don't know. But anyway, so they went through, and everyone's like, I love Talbot's like, and then now I think here lies, or maybe where did Talbot and Dar begin to fall in love? I don't know. Was it here? Maybe it was a little bit before. Who knows? Maybe it was around this time that Talbot saying, "Hey, Dar, listen, I know we've been through a lot together, but do you want to go? I don't know. Afterwards, maybe grab a cup of coffee or something." And Dar's like, "Of course, Talbot, I'd love to. Yes, yes, I'd love to do that. I mean, actually, I've been thinking about inviting you for a cup of coffee ever since we met on Nimbus 3. Oh, I loved how that cigarette was just hanging off of your lips there. Oh, really? Oh, thank you very much, Dar. I love your earmuffs." And so maybe that started the relationship between the two of them. But anyway, so we have. Uh, I'd be curious. What I like, there's a lot to be said about the Ilea Decker relationship, but I'm actually more interested in the Talbot Dar relationship, to be perfectly frank. But anyway, and then afterwards, at the end, maybe Dar's like she's fascinated with Klingons ever since she met Corder. I mean, I assume that's Klingon for hello, right? So, but still, she loves Klingons, maybe. So maybe after she meets Talbot, they get together. Dar's like, one of my great dreams would be to I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting overly kinky here, but maybe one of my great dreams, St. John Talbot, is to spend the night with a Klingon. So maybe this convinces Talbot to undergo surgery to turn himself into a Klingon, and then maybe by doing so, maybe he'll change his name to Gorkon or something like that. So maybe it was because of Talbot's love of Dar that he decided to undergo some kind of surgery to change him into a Klingon, and then he changes his name to Gorkon, and then that might explain a number of things that we're missing, or maybe not. Who knows? Yeah. Anyway, the relationship between Dar and Talbot. Okay, one of the great. Is it unspoken or has it been mentioned in some stories? I'm not sure. If it has, please let me know. All right. Okay, so now we go into the final moments here of, and then going into the planet and going down to Shakari. But before we do, let me go to the. Let me see. We go into the chat here. Jerome Weaselberg says it's no more Kirk-centric than any of the other films. Scott says like Kirk needed his negative side on the episode. Yes. Cooper Clever, damn it, Daisuke, this is a stream about Star Trek 5, not Star Trek 4. Just kidding. LOL. Zyrother, the film pulls in too many directions, deep character introspection, then suddenly switches to frantic action. I'm super curious to see what the original script was like. Scott says, when's Kirk split in two? Yes. Meow says, it's also a very human film. I mean, prior to this, most of the characters were mostly boiled down to their tropes, grumpy doctor, unemotional alien, etc. That's an interesting point. Cooper Glover says, maybe films like this have to be seen again later in time. You could reach a new perspective with these films that way. Zara the 3 did get into the characters a good deal. Let's see. All right. Okay, so, and then Chiro says, maybe we can get a romantic comedy spin-off directed by David Lynch. Oh, we're talking about Dar and Talbot, yeah. Anyway, so that'll be interesting. Yes, what would they do? It would be like, you know, oh gosh, I was gonna do. I'm trying to do. Yeah, I'm not gonna do Dale Cooper. I can't do Dale Cooper for the life of me. So, right, that's the best I can do. Yes. All right. Anyway, I'll have to work on my Dale Cooper impression if we're gonna do Twin Peaks live stream. But all right. So, going back to Dan's here. Hello. Have you seen Galaxy? Yes, Galaxy Quest. And I think Dan, if I remember correctly, you mentioned in a comment about how maybe this live stream series could also cover Galaxy Quest. Did I? If I misremembering, please forgive me. But I haven't responded yet. But I seem to remember, Dan, was it you who mentioned that in one of the comments to some of the videos or one of the videos? So thank you very much for that. All right. So okay. All right. So, Daisy, can you do a Bones impression? I don't know if I can do a Bones impression. Can I do it? I'll think about it. Oh, I can't do it. I can't. But anyway, let me think. But anyway, I'll try if we have time at the end. Talbot and Dar, this discussion took a weird turn. Yes, I know, Aaron. Sorry. I'll turn it back. Turn it back. Yes, of course. So we'll go back to the final act of the film, which is going to Shakari. So, but before that, of course, Cybok has to get changed and he has to get a haircut. This is one of the great mysteries of the film. What happened to Cybok? He suddenly has shorter hair and he looks kind of cleaned up. And I think I always thought that this was like a continuity error. Maybe it was something about how it was shooting late. That's what I always assumed. But in fact, actually, maybe this might have been built into the story more than was led on, so, or more than it was actually revealed. So in any event, I can accept the fact that maybe Cybok, and before meeting God, wants to clean up a little bit. Like, for instance, if someone says to me, hey, Daisuke, hey, get ready because you're going to meet God in 30 minutes. If someone said to me, oh, Daisuke, you're going to meet God in 30 minutes, I'm probably going to want to be sure that, I've got a jacket on, or maybe I don't have any nose hairs hanging out of my nostrils or something like that, or you just want to be sure that everything's cleaned up. So yeah, I don't, maybe there's maybe a barber section of the Enterprise that we're not. This is the Enterprise A after all, so it might have a new place to cut your hair, but maybe it's the same kind of what's like those showers, in the quarters there, what you saw in Star Trek: The Motion Picture, those wonderful showers. I'd love to be able to take a shower like that, by the way. But anyway, I wonder what that's like to take a shower like that in the motion picture. But now we have and then also get your haircut in Star Trek. But He looks good. I mean, he looked good, cool before Cyborg did, but he looks good now. He's all cleaned up. He's got that new robe, and he's walking. And they have that wonderful profile. The four of them as they exit. Now it's the Constellation shuttlecraft on the planet's surface, and it reminded me too of one of the deleted scenes of Mount Rushmore. It's almost looking like Mount Rushmore, the four of them, as they walk off to this epic moment, and we just get the shot of their feet as they climb up, and then they climb down, and then we see the shot of their feet. And I remember in the theater when I first saw this, thinking, "Oh, this is the linking moment with the opening shot of the climbing the mountain of Kirk at the beginning. He's seen climbing the mountain, and here we see the feet as though they have descended." The mountain, so they have climbed and now they are descending. That's how I thought those close-up shots of the feet were. So, and then they go into the middle of this place, and it's like, what's going on? There's nothing here. And like, Cybok's all like this, and then everyone's like, Cybok. And it was like, there's like a Cybok, and it's disappointment. And suddenly, boom, these things come from the ground. Ooh, and then everything turns dark and turns into like a sound stage, and everything is like this, and the shadow and clouds, and then suddenly the light, and there's and then we've got the guy, and I don't know the actor's name, but he looks like the. Did you remember around this time there was the movie called Santa Claus the movie? What was that? What with Dudley Moore, and what was, and John Lithgow, and the like those the candy canes. Remember that? And I just remember thinking, I couldn't, after I saw Santa Claus the movie. I saw that in the theater too. After I saw Santa Claus the movie, I couldn't eat candy canes for like a year. I was so traumatized. But what was I saying? Yeah, so this guy, God, looks like Santa Claus, and from Santa Claus the movie. But anyway, so here we have the confrontation, or the meeting between God and the people here, and it was like, wow, this is God, I guess. But now God's really interested about this thing. How did they cross the? How did you cross the Great Barrier? That we came in a starship. And let's talk about a starship, and then the great moment of Kirk raising his hand. Excuse me, right? And the oft quoted line, perhaps the line of the film, which is, "What does God need with a starship?" And you know, I, is this something that's been used to criticize this film? You know, what does God need with a starship? And I mentioned it before, but that maybe it is a line of criticism, perhaps. But what I didn't mention earlier, and I'll pick up now, is, to be perfectly honest, I don't maybe I said earlier that maybe I get that part of the criticism, but actually, to be perfectly honest, let me retract that statement and just restate that actually I don't get it. I don't get that criticism because um, actually it's a line that really makes sense. What does God need with a starship? That's the first thing. And also the second thing too, it has this wonderful, um, how should I explain? In science fiction, or science fiction literature, science fiction stories, one of the interesting themes that oftentimes emerges is the interaction between um, uh, religious themes and human, say, technological advancements, and where those converge or diverge or clash or sometimes blend together. And so sometimes the idea of there can be a clash between the two, and thus a kind of struggle can occur, which can also be ideological as well. Or they can blend because the theme becomes the notion of human advancement and endeavor being in many ways expression of that which is inherently spiritual. So whatever the turn might be in any form of science fiction that uses this theme, it is there. It's potentially there. And I think that theme is wound up or it's presented so nicely in this great soundbite of a line. What does God need with a starship? And so this, I think, it boils it down to, in many ways, a type of essence. And I really like this line in that way. So, and I think it can be interpreted in many ways of that sort. So, and I think Kirk uses it to his advantage to really question and to really bring about, because if, for instance, he's asking a question, and so there's nothing wrong with asking a question, and so he's met by a kind of violent force here with the eyes and the beams, So with that wonderful hole in his on the center of his shirt there, the center of his uniform, it's not quite. I don't know what's like what's I don't know, like that hole. There's that hole, and there's also the bloodied Peter Preston handprint at the center in Star Trek 2. So there's that, or there's this hole. But any again, so and then of course Spock gets hit too, and then the idea of what does God need the starship? And who are you? Who am I? And don't aren't you God? Don't you know who I am? So he's beginning to question this, and I think that's very much Kirk in a nutshell as well, questioning things. And these aren't unreasonable questions; these are just very reasonable questions. Like, what does God need the starship? And if it was really God, maybe God's like, actually, I don't necessarily need a starship. But maybe I'm just thinking about a starship because I'm fascinated with technology. And you know what? I'm God, and so I'll maybe just to between you and me, like I'm just it's really hard to keep track of it. That maybe that's kind of the conversation could have occurred, kind of practical nature of how things work in terms of the way that things work on a heavily based of administration. If you want that kind of interesting perspective on how heaven works from an administrative point of view, you should watch a film which is called um, oh gosh, why am I blanking on the title? Someone please help me. Oh gosh, I'm not having a good day. I've had a really terrible past few days actually. But what's that film called? Um, Stairway to Heaven. Um, Powell and Pressburger film. Why am I blanking? Please, someone help me with the title. Oh gosh. Matter of Life and Death. Thank you very much, Cooper Clever. Thank you. Matter of Life and Death. So you can get an interesting perspective on that. But here we have, yes, the conundrum. And the conundrum leads to the realization that this is not what Cybok thought it was. And there is the whole disappointment crashing down on Cybok before our very eyes. He is shocked. He can't believe what has happened. He has betrayed everything. He's betrayed everyone. He's betrayed himself and everything. And this is so great too. The realization that the villain has made this huge, huge error, this lifelong error, is really heartbreaking. This is really, really heartbreaking. And this type of maybe sequence with a kind of villain, we we might have seen it, say the motion picture. I don't know if we'd seen a repentant villain in any of the other films, like 2 or 3. Certainly not 3. Certainly not 2. Certainly not 3. I think so. This is a really, I think, another interesting wrinkle in the Cybok character saga. Really fast, and the last bit too, where he gives the Vulcan hand gesture salute to his half brother, his comrade, Spock at the end. And Spock, he gives that like look on his face, and it's just it's really quite stunning. So hard, and um, uh, you know, um, I could not help but notice your pain. Why pain? It runs deep. Share with me. This is by the time that God has turned into Cybok, or the image of Cybok, an evil version of Cybok, which is so shocking. But Cybok versus Cybok, it's a great moment. It's a great turn, and this is more stuff for the argument file that Cybok is a really great character. He's not a villain. He is a maybe misguided, but he uses his power for something that is not wholly evil, and he does it, trying it through means that don't involve killing other people. But Cybok, what a tragic, fascinating character. Lawrence Luckenbill does, as I say, a brilliant, brilliant job bringing a different kind of vibe and energy to the proceedings. It always looks like he's smiling. It's great, great stuff. And of course, I mentioned Sean Connery, so did Neil Blissey, etc. But yeah, just overall great character. And you say what you will about that whole thing about half brother stuff. I'm with you as well. I don't know if that's the strongest part of that particular characterization, but be that as it may, it still works to the very end. It's graceful, it's witty, and it's filled with that energy that pushes it forward to the very end. And he sacrifices himself for the good, maybe for himself, maybe for others, who knows. And that leads also to the shot from the ship against this particular moment, God. But then we realize that God is not dead, but he's still attacking, and they have to beam up. Um, but Kirk isn't able to beam up because the right claw. Claw is back with the bird of prey, just at the nick of time, kind of. And then we have the further exploits here. And what's going to happen? Kirk is stranded. There could have been rockmen. There weren't that. I mean, there could have been. It could have been an interesting sequence with rockmen, but oh well. As Kirk mentioned in Star Trek Three, c'est la vie, right? And then so we have the final kind of chase between Kirk and the God and all this. It's another climbing sequence. I never thought of it before, but he was climbing El Capitan Yosemite at the beginning. Here he's climbing Shakari at the end here. So there's more climbing to be done, and then of course. While all this is happening, the space battle, the threat of the oncoming claw, bird of prey, and then Cord is being asked by Spock to do one last thing, to maybe alleviate the situation. Damn it, sir, you will try, as Spock says. Or I'm maybe paraphrasing the line, because Cord is still a type of senior officer, or he has a reputation, right? Kirk does mention about how his theories were required reading when he was a student. So yes, so here we have all this going on, while at the same time we have the bird of prey, this wonderful, cool sequence, the bird of prey emerging onto the surface and then destroying the thing, the god thing, the god thing, we'll call it that, just in the nick of time. If there are any Roddenberry fans who yeah, I actually maybe I should take that back in honor of Gene Roddenberry, but let's not call it the God thing. We'll call it the we'll call it whoa, that thing. So then the thing gets, of course, fired upon by the Klingon bird of prey, and that's the end of that. We think, we hope, but then that leaves the bird of prey and Kirk. Uh, Really, mano a mano. It's a cool shot. It's almost like that shot in Star Trek 4 with the whaling ship, but it's so cool. It's like, and he gets beamed aboard. So here, is this the first time, or it's in this sequence we're getting transporter beams, because all the way up to this film the transporter beam has been malfunctioning. So right, thank goodness Sonak wasn't in this film, otherwise we would have had a terrible another malfunction sequence. But okay, but here we have the malfunction, not malfunction, the transporter beam to the bird of prey, and we have the interior of the bird of prey, which looks kind of similar to how we saw it in S4, but there's still some differences here. The Zimmerman design, of course, is very, it's coming into high gear, and it'll, of course, continue on throughout other subsequent stories. But now it looks really cool. We've got the whole thing I'm sorry, I'm totally blanking here. That thing where it comes, what do you call that thing? The submarine. Why am I blanking? The thing you pull down. Periscope, right? Down periscope. So we have that thing here too, which I don't think was part of the bridge design in 3 or 4. So that's very cool indeed. So yeah, and then we have the reveal, the great reveal of Cord and Claw, and the new gunner so. And then I love Claw here. I apologize. And then we have the reveal of the gunner, who is of course none other than Spock, and the great reveal as the Star Trek theme from Jerry Goldsmith comes into play. This is such a cool moment. I remember the theater; people were applauding at this moment. It was so cool. And then Kirk goes to Spock and he says, he thought he's going to die, and he said, not possible. You are never alone. And again, it's that wonderful return of the theme. I'll die alone. He wasn't alone, and he didn't die. He was about to hug it, please, Captain, not in front of the Klingons. And that got a huge laugh in the theater, I remember. So that's a great, great, great moment. It also reminds me too, which is, do you remember the bit at the end of Star Trek 3 where, excuse me, my stomach's grumbling here. I didn't have any breakfast today. So do you remember in Star Trek 3 where Kirk doesn't embrace Spock even after all this? He wants to, there's so much emotion going on. Here, he wants to embrace Spock, then Spock, please, we're not from the Klingon. So that's, I don't know if that was meant to be a type of a callback to 3. I'm not sure, maybe not, but still it's a nice parallel. That's such a great moment that leads to a type of weird sort of, I don't want to say détente between Klingons and the Federation, but it is kind of interesting, especially when we think about where the state of Klingon Federation relations are when we get to the next film. But be that as it may, we have a kind of detente. The Klingons are now aboard the Enterprise, which is also an interesting turn, especially when we think about other films, perhaps. But then we get, the whiskey, sharing whiskey. Never thought right, to drink with a Klingon, and she has wonderful muscles. Claw and Vixus. Claw. All right, Claw. And then, of course, the great roundup between the three, and then the reemergence and the reaffirmation of the family core dynamic. And right, God, where's God? God is here. It's not. It's. I know people joke. This is he talking about Shatner? No, no, no. God's here. The human heart. The human heart. And this is, I think, such a lovely moment. Um, and it's this idea of uh, the idea of a real kind of the emotional bond is really important. The emotional bond is really important, and the three of them and how they don't. I thought you said men like us don't have families. He says, I was wrong. I was wrong. That is a really cool moment. You'd think that if Shatner was really so, say, so into himself as sometimes his reputation might lead people to believe, you think that he would forego saying a line like "I was wrong" at a climactic moment of the film, because it would be like, oh, why would my character say I was, But it's a really, so in that way, it's a really bold thing to say, to have his character say I was. That's really cool. That is really cool. And also it's this idea too of their family, and I like how it's not overly done. I like how it's done just right. Their family, and um, as I lost a brother, but I'm glad I got him back. And it's also a recollection of what happened to Spock in the earlier films, of course. And so they really mean a lot to each other. They really mean a lot to each other. And the Jerry Goldsmith score just kicks in, and things are now happy once again. And it's a lovely moment. And what I love too also is this. Of course, there's all these spectacular fireworks, explosions, and things of that sort. But the climactic moment, the climactic moment of the film is not like some huge. Like I would say that the climactic moment is not the explosion of the thing on Shakari, but the climactic moment is where where Klaus says, "I apologize." The reveal of Spock, and also this moment here, I was wrong. So these are the climactic moments of the film, in my view, which is very much in keeping, for the most part, with with the kind of theory that I have, or view I have, of not all, but most of the Star Trek films. Most of the Star Trek films up to now have had climactic moments that haven't dealt with a huge explosion at the end. They've had this kind of quiet moment, or moment of pondering or thinking or considering the problem. Think back to motion picture. Star Trek 2 might be straddling the line a little bit with this hypothesis, but still there's a moment where one can say that the climactic moment is not the explosion in that film, but indeed something else. The same thing arguably is the case for Star Trek 3. Star Trek 4, it has a moment where you have this long sequence between a probe in space and the whales. And then here, Star Trek 5, there's explosions, that's for sure, but the moment actually is what happens afterwards. The detente, the peace, the no, what's the phrase? I don't know. I don't want to borrow. I don't want to get too politically technical here, but that is those are the moments that are arguably the climactic parts of this film, and so I love that. When we get to the next film, as much as I love the next film, Star Trek 6, the next film well, okay, I'll get to that when we get to that. So, in any event, here we have detente, or peace, which is strange, it's odd maybe in the whole context of the continuum of Star Trek, but still, it's great that we have it here. And things are kind of, let's say, back to where they were, to the point that we return to the woods and the night and the playing of right, and something that leads into the three of them over the campfire, around the campfire, and then the leading into row your boat. And Bones on the side there, interestingly enough, doesn't join in, at least at first. But maybe he's still lost in the thought, because after all, he did go through a very emotionally trying experience in terms of the reliving of that very sad a part of his life with his father. Maybe that's going through his head in this particular moment. But still, whatever the case may be, we have this this thing of a type of return, and the three are once again joined together. And of course, row, row, row your boat. And what is row, row, row your boat? Right, row, row, row your boat is a song where people join in unison. I mean, they could have sung anything. I mean, they could have sung, I don't know, the 12 Days of Christmas or something like that. But they sang row, row, row because row, 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 but each is separate, but then they're joined together, and that is in many ways a type of musical metaphor for how they have operated. They are each individuals, but they also join together in a medley, and that medley always leads to things. And again, to borrow that medley metaphor, right? Right. Kirk knew that he wouldn't die because he was together. So he was in the row, row, row your boat medley phase, and so he will never die whenever he's doing row, row, row your boat. Row, row, row your boat. Da, 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 dun, dun, dun. I love the Jerry. Dun, dun, it's like that's like claw. Dun, 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 dun. All right. Here we go. Let's go here. Okay. Let's see. Is that it? I think that's it for me. At least for now. Let me go to the live chat here. Floyd thinks his ex will wonder where those bruises came from. I don't know if I wonder. I'll know. I'll know where they came from. Yeah. So, yeah, that's great. Harry Marshall is here. Let's see. You say people often think of a film's writer, director, and stars, but often forget the editor's piece edited. And maybe am I back? Uh oh. Hold on. Did it freeze? Yeah, I suddenly got some trouble on my end. Got some trouble on my end too. I dropped. It said I dropped off and I had to push the reconnect button. Is it back? Is it back now? Oh, great, I'm back. Okay. All right, great. Maybe I was going through the Great Barrier, and suddenly, it's like, oh, now I'm through, and now I'm in Shakari. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Floydian. Thank you, Zyrothers. Thank you, Jerome Weaselberry. Thank you so much. Okay. Yes, did it freeze? Yep. Oh, Roger says, Daisuke, eat some ginger and garlic. If you have it, you will feel better. Thank you so much, Anthony. Thank you so much. Yes, yes, yes. It's not like it's not anything like sickness or anything. It's just, I had. Whoops, am I freezing again? Yeah, you're looking a bit fuzzy though. Yes, I know. It looks maybe my Wi-Fi connection isn't so good today. Don Kelly, sorry about that. Yeah. Yeah, I admit I'm not feeling too good today. I've had really I don't want to get into too much detail because I've had a really oh, how should I put it? One of those things where I will I don't know if I've never I people say that I have this people say that I have this like, oh, you're always friendly or something like that, but actually that's not the case. When I meet someone that really there's something that's going on that is actually quite serious, and so it's really quite I've never been this angry before. I'm actually there's something going on that's actually making me very stressed, and I've been very angry. So it's actually causing me, and my family and I are gonna deal with it and so yeah, it's something that's not so pleasant at the moment. And I've we have a number of people who are supporting us, and so yeah, we may need to we may need to move to someplace else in Tokyo because it's a little bit of an unpleasant situation that arose. So it's so just to be I don't want to go into too much detail, but I'm not feeling it today actually. So I'm I would have canceled this live stream actually, but I thought it would be good for me. So, but yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry to be like that. But of course, it's not your fault. It's no one's fault. It's not my fault. It's not anyone's fault. Well, actually, it is someone's fault. It's some stupid person's fault. You know, sometimes you meet someone that's like a real monster. I've come across some people who are like real monsters, and they're trying to like hurt our family. And so I don't want to have we have to protect ourselves in many ways as possible. So yeah, yeah. You know, not everyone in Japan is very pleasant. There are some really evil people out there in the world, so you just have to be careful. And you just have to deal with it the best you can. So all right. Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much. I don't want to get. Let's turn to better and brighter things. And so the what do you call it? Yes. So again, I don't mean to do that. I'm really sorry. I didn't. I'm again. It's just I'm only human, I suppose. So I can't help it sometimes. So I will maybe just close, hopefully a happier note, and say that I really enjoyed this conversation, and I will be uh, cherishing this conversation. And in fact, this will give me a nice opportunity to recall Star Trek Five. In terms of happy memories, you know, again, what I'm going through, it'll pass. It'll pass, and it'll probably pass in maybe a kind of it might pass like in a week or a month or so because actually we might move. So to another apartment, which is actually a little bit bigger and better, actually. So hopefully this might change maybe in a month or 2 months or 3 months or something like that. But in any event, once this is passed, then you know, things will be much better. And so in that spirit, I will look back on the discussion of Star Trek Five: The Final Frontier with great memories because it'll be this is a discussion that really got me through a kind of a rough patch, and you know, it's a film that I saw with my family, and my son was laughing at some of the Sulu moments, the Chekhov moments, and all that, and so it'll bring me a lot of bright spots, and so who'd have thunk it, right? Who'd have thunk that Star Trek Five would be a film like that? But it is, and I think for good reasons, as I was saying, because it is a film that is filled with emotion, filled with passion, and is also filled with a lot of really great warm spots. And as I say, despite all of it, despite all the criticisms over the years, and believe me, I know there's been a number. Despite all of it, it's still, I think, a very good time. And as I say, maybe it came at the perfect time for me right now because it's making me very happy. It is making me very happy. And row, row, row your boat. I wish I could sing that to you know to the day's end because it is making me very happy indeed. I wish I could sing row, row, row your boat with all of you. That's how I feel. So you have lifted my spirits in a way that I think I would have I wouldn't have felt had it not been for you and this chat. So thank you so much, my dear friends, for this. I'm sorry, so sorry that the things froze up at the end or maybe during, you know, with the poor Wi-Fi connection. Maybe I'm still fuzzy now. So I apologize for that. I really should try to make those situations a little bit better. I'll try to plan it in advance. Also, I apologize for my growling stomach during this thing, but I don't have time to eat breakfast. I do wake up early, and so I can't for this thing, so I don't eat breakfast. I really should, but I don't have time to eat breakfast before this. So, and I don't want to subject you to the terrible scene of me eating while I'm talking. That's totally rude on my part. So I don't want to do that. So I will do. I will. Please forgive me if my stomach growled. Um, but anyway, I will say here. that yeah, I will say maybe we will, if you don't mind, maybe we'll give it another minute, and I'll try to recover a little bit more when it comes to the next live stream, which is Star Trek Six: The Undiscovered Country. I am very much I'm very much looking forward to that immensely, and so it's a very complex film, and it's a film that is filled with a lot of questions. Actually, a lot of questions. I love it very much, but it's filled with a lot of questions as well. So I'll try to touch upon those questions, what I think those questions are, when we get to it. But in the meantime, my friends, let me go to the chat, and I'll leave it for another minute, and then we can head off. So again, I apologize for my just again I tried to get into it as much as I can, but I hope you can understand, and I'll try to get better as the week progresses. So let's see here. Thank you, promised Harry. Thank you so much for that, and also thank you, Don. Thank you so much, Aaron. Thank you so Pascal. Thank you, Zyrother, Jay Moore. Thank you so much, and Floyd. And thank you so much. Yes. Yes, I feel like the Enterprise, after it's met the Reliant for the first time in Star Trek Two. So now I'm still recovering, and so I'm recovering to the point where we have to set up for the final Mutara Nebula battle. So that's where I am at the moment. So I'm still in that hours can seem like days mode, but I'm maybe by next week we'll be in the Mutara Nebula Enterprise moment, sauce for the goose. So anyway, yes. All right, my friends. Mark, thank you so much. I will. Let's see. Atari 2602, thank you so much. Star Trekker, thank you so much. Oh, Star Trekker, nice name. I love that name. Scott, Neil Blissey, and Floydian Pink, Zyrother, Kubrick Lover. Kubrick Lover, you are great. Dango, thank you so much. Dango, I don't know what that message means, but thank you so much. And let's see here. Oh gosh, Dan, thank you so much, and Roger Chiggers. If I didn't mention, I apologize. Thank you all to have joined. Jerome Weaselberry, thank you so much for everyone who joined, and I look forward to seeing you at the next one. And my dear friends, my dear friends, please be well, or as well as you can be. Even if you can't be 100% well, be as well as you can be. And when you have taken care of that, when you've taken care of that, my friends, please be sure to watch a lot of great movies. So thank you so much, and let us end with row, row, row your boat. Row, row, row your boat gently down this. Christian, thank you. Merrily, 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 merrily. Life is but a dream. Join me. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Row, row, row your boat. Merrily, merrily,